everybody, welcome back to At the Table. As you may have noticed, Sydney is not with us today. She is out on maternity leave. Her family is welcoming a sweet, sweet baby, and Sydney, if you're watching this, we miss you and glad you all are doing well. Some of you may recognize me. My name is Cassidy. I have been on the show with Sydney before, and so I'm kind of taking over in her absence. And with me today, I have Miss Karen Wilson. She is an Extension Master Food Volunteer underneath Sydney. She volunteers here around Sampson County and also into Johnston, where I'm located. But today, I really wanted to focus this show on kind of celebrating summer and welcoming in fall. Of course, as September kind of rolls in, that might be a great time to kind of work on your grilling skills as the weather is cooling off a little bit. So today and this month, I really wanted to focus those recipes on things that were grill recipes, quick recipes, those bright, delicious flavors of the end of summer and early fall. So today we are going to start out, Miss Karen, this is actually a recipe that you recently fell in love with, is that right?
It is, and I hope that you all will fall in love with it as well.
Yep, so she's going to get to work on a roasted radish recipe.
Correct.
I'm very excited to try this. Tell us a little bit, why is this your new favorite recipe?
So my family loves radishes except for myself, and it's because of the heat. I don't like the heat, and I discovered that the heat of a radish is in the red skin. So once you remove the red skin and you roast them, they become very flavorful and actually sweet. And this is a great way to consume something that maybe your family loves that you don't love, and introduce it in a new way that becomes your favorite, which is now one of my favorites.
Yeah, I don't like spicy foods either, so I'm really excited to learn from you today. So show us what we need to do to get started.
So with the radish, you're just going to go ahead and prep it. You want to cut off the tail at the bottom, and you just want to cut off your greens. So you kind of have a flat surface, and this will help you with peeling. And so I use one of these. Now, if you're skilled with a knife and you think you can peel with a knife, that's great, but I use a peeler, and you're just gonna peel all the red skin off. And so this is where the heat lies. Now, if you've got family members that kind of like a little heat, you could probably do something where you do every so often you peel it and leave a row, kind of like a candy stripe. But for me, I like to take everything off, and we're just gonna continue, and then when get them all done, we're just going to put them in a bowl and let them rest until we finish. And so one of the things that you can do is you can use this as a snack after school, or you can use this as a side dish. These would be great for those who are getting ready to go and tailgate for football games or local sports. They will hold up even when they're a little cooler, but they taste better when they're warm. We also, one of the things about the radish is that you can actually consume the leaves of the radish. You can put those in a salad, chop them up, and if you like to add a little heat to a salad, this is a great way to do that and provide additional nutrition, and radishes are nutritional for you. So I'm just going to continue cutting these up and getting them prepped. When I'm done, I'm going to toss them with olive oil. And then we're going to put them into an oven of 400 degrees. Going to just cover them with aluminum foil at first and cook them for about 10 to 15 minutes. This is a new oven for me, so we're just going to check in about the 15-minute mark and see if we need to go further. When they come out, you just serve them and eat them.
All right, while you're working on that, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started on prepping some of the items for our Mediterranean turkey burgers. This is actually a new recipe that was kind of crafted based on a meatball recipe that I found online, and I was not feeling meatballs because when I read this recipe, I kind of thought, seems like they maybe could be a little dry. I wasn't sure what sauce to put on them if they were to dry out. And so I just turned them into burgers. And that's something you can do with any recipe that's using ground meat. It could be a meatloaf, it could be a burger, it could be meatballs. But one of the things that I really like about this recipe, one, it's a totally different spin and different taste on turkey burgers. Sometimes people might have kind of ideas that maybe they don't like turkey burgers, but this is a recipe that's just a totally different flavor anyway. But to get started, I do want to add some vegetables into this recipe. I have heard for, a long time, many different ways to clean and work with mushrooms. These are actually already pre-cleaned. Now, one difference in how you actually clean your mushrooms, you want to think about how you plan to use them. So I'm actually going to be using these to saute, so I don't want a lot of water in them. If you don't want water, just take your mushroom and a damp cloth and just kind of rub it. And that takes away that dirt, that soil, whatever may be on the outside of that mushroom without adding water to it. If you rinse it under well, really any kind, whether it's warm water, cold water, whatever, if you rinse it under water, then it's going to absorb that water. Mushrooms are very spongy. So just think about that. If you're gonna put mushrooms in a soup, it doesn't matter. You can rinse them under cold water. But if it's something like a stir fry or a sauteed recipe, take a damp cloth and just kind of rub it. But I'm gonna get started cutting these. These are kind of, I already have a pre-cut going on, but just as a reminder, when you have your knife, you want to grip the back of it, grip it by the blade, keep the tip down, and just, you want to use that rocking motion, keeping note of where your fingers are at all times. And I'm just going to work on cutting these up into smaller pieces. And when we come back, we'll get those radishes in the oven, and we'll also work on cutting these up a little more, get them cooking and prepared for our turkey burger recipe.
Introducing the Star Communications app. All the tools you need in one convenient location. You can access Watch TV everywhere. Check local channel lineup. Check your Star email. View and pay your Star bill. Report troubles. Use your Star Security app. Check your home voicemail. Sign up for CrowdFiber. Check your Wi-Fi speed. The list keeps going and going. Download for free from the App Store or Google Play.
Hey guys, welcome back. I am working on getting our mushrooms kind of finely chopped so that they will be hidden in our Mediterranean turkey burger. One of the things that I really like about mushrooms, especially cooked alongside of a meat dish, mushrooms themselves take on a really meaty flavor. So especially for folks that are vegetarian or maybe just want to cut back on their meat consumption and stretch those recipes by adding in more flavor, a cheaper alternative like mushrooms, they can be a really good way to fit nutrition into your meals. And like I said, they can also be hidden really well because they do take on a very meaty flavor. In this case, we do want to chop them up pretty finely. You don't want huge chunks of mushrooms in your burger. But one of the things with these mushrooms is while I'm using a knife, if you wanted them much smaller, if you have people in your household who maybe think that they don't like mushrooms, try putting them into a food processor and that will grind them up and they will actually look like the ground turkey, or if you're using ground beef, they will take on that look and they'll be hidden even better. But the reason that I'm actually chopping it rather than creating that ground meat look is because once I finish with these mushrooms, I'm actually going to take a paper towel and try to absorb some of the water so that our burgers hold together a little better. But personal preference, you can work with them a variety of different ways. But while I get this going, Miss Karen, you've got some radishes that are ready to be tossed.
They are. So I've peeled the radishes. You see I've left some red on some of the radishes, and for the larger radish I've kind of cut those in half just so that they're a little bit more uniformed when they bake. And all we're going to do is just take some olive oil. This is going to probably be about a teaspoon of olive oil. I'm just going to use my hands and I'm just going to toss them just so they get nice and coated. And we're going to put them onto this cookie sheet, or well, I call it a cookie sheet, but we're not making cookies, but a sheet pan. And then what I like to do is just spread them out just a little bit so they're just not touching each other. And then we're just going to put a little bit of aluminum foil on there. That's just to keep them from getting dried out. I'm going to put them in a 400-degree oven.
While she's working on that, we'll go ahead and get our burner on. And I'll take this olive oil, just add a little bit into your pan. You can drizzle it, or if you want to use if you need an exact measurement, then roughly a tablespoon or so. Just kind of move that around in the pan. And then we'll go ahead and get our mushrooms going. One of the great things about this recipe, I am huge on meal planning. And all of the ingredients that are going into this pan itself are ingredients that you can use in other recipes. So as these cook down a little bit, I'm actually going to add my spinach into my pan. And you can cut up your spinach or you can allow it to kind of wilt down. It will lose a lot of that volume, so I like to just go ahead and use an entire bag of spinach. And like I said, it wilts down it condenses pretty well. So I'm gonna put that entire bag of spinach in here, and then if I choose not to use it all with my ground turkey for this recipe, this is a pre-prepped ingredient that I could have for spaghetti, or if you wanted to have quesadillas later in the week, throw some vegetables in there. It works really well for a variety, at least for me, a variety of recipes, because mushrooms and spinach are usually my go-to ingredients no matter what I'm cooking. But I'm gonna go ahead and try to cut down some of this spinach. Now, one thing that we talk about quite a bit on this show is texture and trying to have those bite-sized pieces. So this is a technique called a chiffonade, and we've done this before with salads, but this is one that you can really cut down the spinach even more, but you just kind of stack it, and then you take it and roll it, and then turn it, and I like to say you're cutting it kind of like sushi. You just cut that roll and you have these nice ribbons. So you guys can kind of see we have nice ribbons to throw in. I may not do our entire bag of spinach that way, but I am gonna cut it down just a little bit so that we don't have these long, lengthy stems. I just don't think that texture is gonna work very well for this particular recipe. So I'm gonna be working on this, and then when we come back, we'll put everything together and get things on the grill.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Hey guys, welcome back. Our mushrooms have cooked down over our break, so I'm gonna go ahead and add in our spinach. We've got it nice and chopped up. And again, while it looks like there's a lot of spinach going into our pan, it will cook down, and so it won't be quite this full. So don't be intimidated by the amount of spinach that appears to be in your pan. I'm gonna get that stirred around just a little bit, and then we're gonna add in our seasonings. This helps to go ahead and flavor these vegetables before they go in with the turkey. So I have with us, I've got some garlic powder, and you could use fresh garlic as well if you chopped it up really small or minced it. You can actually take your knife and scrape it, kind of drag it across your board back and forth with a little bit of salt on top of it, and that will actually help to make sort of a garlic paste or a garlic puree. But I just have garlic powder for today, so I'm gonna sprinkle some of that in there. Maybe a 1/4 teaspoon is good if you need a little bit of a measurement to go by. And then I have parsley. If you have never worked with parsley before, it works really well in Italian and Mediterranean dishes. This is dried parsley. Of course, your dried herbs and spices are much more potent, so you don't need quite as much. But if you have fresh parsley that you're growing in your garden, that works really well in this recipe. Or my personal favorite, if you are in the produce section at the grocery store, there is a lightly dried. I love the lightly dried basil and parsley. Those are some staple items that I'll try to make sure that I have on hand at all times. We've talked a little bit before about building your pantry and having those staple items at all times. Basil, parsley, garlic powder, salt, pepper, and olive oil, those are definitely my go-tos. So while this cooks down a little bit more, it's starting to smell really, really good in here. I'm gonna get to work on our asparagus. This is a dish that pairs really well with this Mediterranean turkey burger. The lemon juice in the marinade that I'm about to make really brightens up the flavor, and it pairs really well with the brightness that's already in these Mediterranean turkey burgers. Now with the radishes that Ms. Karen is working on, that might be a place where if you need a little bit more flavor, if you need a little bit more brightness, that is the purpose of acid in your foods. Now I'm just rolling this lemon back and forth to kind of free up those juices and stretch it a little bit further. So just take your knife, cut it in half, and then I'm actually going to score the lemon and then place it to the side so it'll be ready when we are ready to put it into our bag for our marinade. Now, these asparagus have been in my refrigerator for a couple of days, but they still look nice and fresh. You may have noticed when you go to the grocery store, if you are buying fresh asparagus, that they keep it in a little basin of water. You can do this in your refrigerator the exact same way. Some people like to go ahead and cut the ends off and then stick them in water. It's really personal preference, but I had not done that. This is just from the store. I washed it and then put it into a vase of water. Same with your fresh herbs. If you have fresh herbs that you're trying to extend the life of them, then that would be a good solution as well. Now, if you don't have a knife or you need something for kids to be able to help you in the kitchen, you can take your asparagus and just kind of pop it, and wherever it breaks, that's a nice point for it to get that hard, more fibrous end off. So we'll go ahead and put that into our Ziploc bag. I really like to use a Ziploc bag so that I don't have to worry about washing yet another dish. As I mentioned, we have our lemon juice. If you don't have a juicer, this is a really great way, or if you're like me and you just don't like to clean a whole bunch of gadgets, Sydney's the gadget queen. This is Cooking with Cassidy today, where it's very basic, and I don't like to clean all these extra gadgets. So I can put my spoon in the dishwasher. I already have my knife out. Just take your spoon to have your lemon to squeeze over to give it a little bit of extra leverage. So I'm getting a lot of juice out of this lemon. I don't think I need quite all that, so I'm going to stop there. Give my spinach one more little stir in our pan. And then to our lemon juice, we're then going to add our olive oil. Now, to make a marinade, whether it's for meats or vegetables, whatever, all you need is an acid, an oil, and your seasoning. So you could use balsamic vinegar, if you have a sherry vinegar, if you've got a white wine, you could use any of those to have your acid, and then of course your fat will be from olive oil. If you don't have olive oil, you can use canola oil. That's a pretty neutral flavor profile, but as long as it's a liquid at room temperature oil, you are good to go. And then I'm going to add in a little bit of garlic. Italian seasoning would work well here, but since I have parsley out and those are the same seasonings that we're using in the turkey burger, I'm going to go ahead and put some of that in there as well. Now, one thing that I always like to make sure that people understand, it is absolutely a habit to be able to press out the air from your bag. But whenever you're marinating and tossing things around, you actually want that air in there so that it adds a little bit of room and space in the bag for things to move around. So we're going to toss this. Our grill is nice and hot. I'm going to turn it up a little bit more. If you have an indoor grill, this recipe works really well, especially this time of year. It might be rainy or it may actually be a little too warm outside. But, you know, or if you're just cooking for one or two, these grills work really nicely. But this recipe works great on an outdoor grill as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get these onto our grill, and once we go to break and we come back, I'm actually going to get this stuff out of the pan, let it get into a bowl, and then I'm going to let it cool and pat it with a paper towel, and that will help to get out some of that moisture before we come back to our turkey burgers. But Miss Karen, do you think that our radishes are done?
Well, let me check. I think they're looking pretty good.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and pull them for now. And we're going to place them. As you can see, some of them like this have a nice little golden char on the end of it. I'm going to close my oven door. There's two philosophies with salt. Some people like to salt before they roast. I like to salt afterwards. And all I'm going to do is just take some sea salt. We're just going to salt these. We're going to let these cool down just a little bit, and these are going to be delicious to eat.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
Hey guys, welcome back to At the Table. I'm just gonna add a little bit of parsley seasoning to our actual turkey meat. We're gonna go ahead and put those turkey burgers together and then get those on the grill. So I added just a little bit of parsley. I did think that our mixture with our vegetables had a little bit of garlic in there, maybe a little too much for just the vegetables. So I actually didn't add any into the turkey meat itself, but if you love garlic and you think that it would work really well, or if you have Italian, you can definitely make this recipe more of your own that way. I'm also going to add in sun-dried tomatoes. Now, this is a food that Sydney actually got me turned on to. I had never had sun-dried tomatoes before, and now they are another go-to staple that I keep at my house. I throw them in spaghetti, I throw them into things like chicken Alfredo, I put them on wraps and sandwiches. Anywhere that I can add in sun-dried tomatoes, I do. And I'm not a tomato fan, so if you're not a tomato fan, maybe sun-dried tomatoes are the way to go for you as well. And they are packed in oil, so if you get down to the bottom of your sun-dried tomatoes, you can use that oil in the bottom of a saute pan and actually cook with it. So I've got that in there. The next thing I want to do is add in our vegetable mixture, and I'm actually gonna pat this down just a little bit and try to absorb some of that water that we have in there. So just a good pat. And again, I don't think that I need all of that per se, so I'm just gonna add in maybe half of it. Just to add some vegetables and a little extra flavor and texture into there. And the next thing I'm gonna put in is some feta. Now, if you can find the reduced fat feta, then that's certainly a heart healthier choice. But because this is the full fat, they didn't have reduced fat at the store. That's something that we tend to run into from time to time. I'm just gonna use a little bit less. But in order to do that, I'm gonna cut those, or kind of press those bigger pieces and crumble them a little bit better. Now, if you are not a feta fan, I know there are lots of people who don't like feta. They don't like how it smells. They don't like how it tastes. If that is you, that's okay. Goat cheese is a really good alternative. Reduced fat mozzarella is a great alternative as well. I would stick to more of those white colored cheeses because I think the flavor works a little bit better in terms of what is Mediterranean. A cheddar would be fine if that's what you like, but I think it's gonna add a little bit different of flavor profile. So before we get all this mixed together, I do want to add in an egg because we have some pretty wet ingredients, so I want to make sure that this holds together really well. If you are cracking an egg, a lot of times I was certainly taught this way to crack it on the side of a dish, but if you do that, it actually pushes that eggshell up into the egg itself. So I use a flat surface, whether it is the countertop or the inside of a dish. And then I'll go ahead and break up that egg. And then pour it on top of our mixture. And then I'm gonna get in there with my hands to really mix everything together, get those flavors married. You can certainly let this sit in the refrigerator and kind of marinate those flavors together a little bit better. But if you're in a rush or in a pinch, it's not a necessary step. But if that is something that sounds good to you, you could maybe prep this meal on a Sunday afternoon, and then when you get home from work on Monday, then your dinner is already put together and ready to go, and all you have to do is cook it. So that's something to also think about whenever you're talking about getting healthy, delicious, nutritious meals on the table quickly. So I'm gonna now just kind of put these into their burger form. And if you think that it's still a little too wet for you, you can add in breadcrumbs that will absorb some of that water. Another egg might end up making it bind together a little bit better if that's something that you need to do. Now, once these burgers cook, a lot of times people ask me, well, how do you know if it's done, especially if it's turkey? Because the color of the turkey looks a little different than if you're working with beef. Hopefully you guys can hear that sizzle. That's how you know your grill is nice and hot and exactly where it needs to be. And I actually don't have room on this for all of my burgers, so we won't be able to fit all of them on there today. But how to know when the turkey is done? That is when a digital food thermometer is one of your best friends. So I'm actually going to save this mixture for later and get those burgers on there. But before we go, I did want to say thank you to Miss Karen. I have so much enjoyed having you here today.
I've enjoyed it.
And hopefully you guys have as well. I know Miss Karen and I learn a lot from each other.
We do.
We can learn and pick up new skills in the kitchen and a little new ideas like the roasted radishes.
Exactly.
But Miss Karen will be with me on the show for the next couple of months. So I hope you all have enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you all back at the Table.